Will we further incorporate animal welfare and animal rights into the basic law so that we have a solid basis for considering the relevant policies and laws? Ms. Alice Mack. Mr. Deputy, there is a kind of right called animal rights. I thank Mr. Roy Kwong for moving this motion today. We often strive for the rights of different groups, but we often forget that animals also are entitled to some rights. We rely on the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance, but the last amendment was made in 2006, 11 years ago. And there has been more and more concern in the community on animal welfare and animal rights. But we've also seen a spate of animal cruelty incidents, and as a result, there is a strong voice for the laws to be amended to better protect the animals. I agree that we should review the legislation. Well, Mr. Gary Chan, for example, in his amendment, proposes to amend the road traffic ordinance. Because at the moment, if my car knocks down a dog, there is no need to report the matter to the police. So I think that the ordinance should be amended to better protect the animals. But like some other members mentioned just now, they are animal lovers. They have my home is like a zoo with many animals. But many members, some members also mentioned that indeed in the community there are people who are afraid of animals. And about the suggestion of allowing animals on buses, well, there is quite strong opposition. So I understand that many members are really committed to the issue. They have moved some amendments. But when it comes to actually implementing these ideas in the community, it will take a lot of time because we need to convince people in the community who are not animal lovers or who are not familiar with animals. So when it comes to animal rights, I think the crux of the matter is education. Like Mr. Eddie Ju said, we must educate the public so that they understand that animals can live with us together in the community. And as pet owners, we also need to be a responsible owner so that other people would get a better idea of the living habits of animals and allow animals to live together with us in the community. Some people regard keeping animals as a symbol of status. Because, for example, a young man told me that if he keeps a dog or a cat, it would be easier for him to court a girl because the girl would be happy to play with the dog or the cat. So when it comes to stop and think before keeping a pet, well, it is nothing but a slogan. Sometimes on the internet, I feel really upset in reading news about beating up animals or treating animals cruelly. It's beyond my imagination. So legislative amendment is necessary, but I think the more important thing is to educate the public so that they learn and accept the animals in the community. Well, let's say I've heard from friends that if there is a newborn in the family, they will have to send their pets away, and that's another reason for abandoning their pets. But let me show you some photos. Well, I have masked the face of this girl, but this girl has been living with animals since she was born. The puppies would even hold the milk bottle for her. She's now 2 or 3 years old, and you can see that when she reads, the 2 dogs would stay with her. And when she eats, the dogs would sit and wait until the crumbs would be dropped on the floor. And when she reads, her dog is by her side. So I think that we should not put up any excuse for abandoning your pet. If you love your child, then this pet is also a family member. We should love the pet as well. As for children with pets, in their childhood, they tend to grow up to be able to take care of other people. This girl is 3 years old, but she already understands that dogs cannot eat chocolate. So when she eats chocolate, she would say this to the dog, that you must not eat chocolate. Not because she wants to eat chocolate herself, but at the same time she also shares biscuits with the dog. And after the dog has finished eating, the girl would also pick up the food bowl for the dog. So if a child grows up with a pet, then the child would be more mature when they grow up and be able to take care of others. So it should not be an excuse for abandoning pets. We have an animal lover at home, and we become a family who receive abandoned pets. We received abandoned dogs, birds, turtle, everything. Well, many pet owners were fond of their pets because they were cute, but they did not consider that it's a lifelong responsibility. So when it comes to safeguarding animal rights and amending the legislation, we must not neglect public education. We must educate the public so that they truly accept animals as part of the community, and they should respect them.
Mr. Leung Yiu-chung. Mr. Deputy, Mr. Roy Kwong moves this motion to safeguard animal rights. I agree with it, because animals are living things. They have the right to live just like human beings, and they should be cared for. However, we have heard a lot of animal abuse cases, and at the same time, every year thousands of animals have been put down, and it shows the inadequacies of current policies. I quickly go over a number of cases involving death of animals. December last year, a wild boar wandered into the airport. Some witnesses said that airport authority used vehicles to knock the wild boar down. It suffered serious injury, and the AFCD said that because of that it had to be put down. And in May this year, an ox in Sai Kung was knocked down. The right front leg was hurt, and it could not stand up to graze. The AFCD said that because of the serious injury, it has to be put down. June this year, the LCSD pruned trees in an egret tree. At least 16 egret siblings, younglings, died. And same year, there was a 3-year-old horse. It tripped and it had to be put down. Well, if you have some compassion, you will feel sad. What happened to our conservation policy? We see this year a lot of lives were lost. Will there be more cases in the future? A lot of the animal-related policies are coordinated by the AFCD, which is under Food and Health Bureau. And very often, animal issues are dealt with from the perspective of food or environmental hygiene, but not from the perspective of animal rights and welfare. The AFCD's point of view when it comes to stray animals is very simple. whether there is nuisance, whether it affects environmental hygiene. They don't think about how to properly deal with them. And they think, well, since they are stray, then they should be caught. And if there are problems with their health, whether they are up for adoption or not, they will be put down. In the past 5 years, 33,116 animals have been put down. The government, the administration said that the number has greatly dropped. What does it mean? If the number has dropped, so it's an improvement. But you can't just put a number to, you can't just view lives as a number. In February this year, Taiwan started zero euthanization for stray animals. But there is no such concept in Hong Kong. They just say that the number of euthanized cases has dropped a lot. It's an improvement. This is unreasonable, and it's not appropriate either. Apart from an outdated euthanization policy, there are many other areas where we lag behind. We have a prevention of cruelty to animals ordinance. There are many flaws in this ordinance. Even with a conviction, maximum penalty is $200,000 and 3 years imprisonment. Well, it was mirrored. It was mirrored from the 18th century UK law. There has never been any comprehensive review to see if this piece of legislation effectively protects and safeguards animal rights. Under the law, if the vet says that there is no abuse, there will not be any rescue. So it's when the animals are on the brink of death that they will be taken away. If we look at US, UK, Australia, and Taiwan, animal carers, if they can't prove that they cannot properly take care of the animals, then enforcement officers will intervene. If they neglect the animal, then it's against the law. In the UK, if the carer inadvertently caused the animal to be lost, then then the person is liable. A number of animal welfare groups raised the issue. However, the administration has never taken it seriously. There has been a demand to ask the administration to set up an animal police with officers specially trained to deal with animal abuse cases. The administration refused to do anything along this line. When it comes to abuse of animals, the police treat this as miscellaneous cases. There should be proper training given to police officers so that they will handle the case with the right attitude. When we are still talking about prevention of cruelty to animals, many other countries have already gone beyond that, not just to prevent cruelty, but to promote their welfare and rights. Say, to plan public areas from the perspective of animals. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Well, we have fragmented pieces of legislation or provisions in relation to protection of animals. We hear very often about the prevention of cruelty to animals to penalize culprits who abuse or kill animals, but the maximum penalty is only $200,000 and 3 years imprisonment. There is also the protection of wild animal ordinance, the public health animal and bird ordinance. However, none of these are comprehensive. provisions are fragmented and scattered all over the place. Perpetrators are often let go scot-free. This year, there was a revision of CAP 139B, Public Health Animals and Birds and Animal Traders Regulation. It was implemented in March this year. A number of animal welfare groups criticized the administration for the lack of animal protection policies, and even with the law protecting animals, there is insufficient manpower to enforce it. Mr. Roy said that, well, in a lot of the areas, the administration is not doing enough. A number of members have asked for setting up of animal police to tighten the control of animal trading. I do believe that there is very little difference amongst members of different political parties. The AFCD is the coordinating department of animal issues related to animals. It seems that euthanasia is the easiest way. Between 2015 and 2016, they have spent $33.6 million involving 2,421 dogs and 696 cats. When it comes to animal policy, the most difficult one to implement is TNR, trap, neuter, and release. We've been talking about this for many years, and there are only 2 pilot schemes. And in Cheongcheong, the scope has been narrowed down. The AFCD started consultation in 2007, and it's been 12 years. It's still on a pilot basis. In 2016-17, the AFCD only set aside $1.5 million, an increase of $250,000 or $200,000. I do believe that if they spend the money they have used on euthanasia, on TNR, a lot more animals will not have been killed. Of course, TNR targets dogs only, and protection of animals more about dogs than cats. And I do hope that the microchip system for cats should be put in place as soon as possible. And there is the TNR program for cats in the community as well. Well, sometimes the voluntary workers release cats back to parks, and if there is a little nuisance caused to the community, I hope the LCSD will treat them kindly. There are 4 animal management centers under the AFCD. The Undersecretary already said that they will not be open to the public. So it's very difficult for members of the public to learn about these centers, and they can't monitor it. Mr. Gary Chan makes a very humble request, asking animal welfare organizations and legislators to conduct regular inspection to these centers. I do think that the administration will have no reason to turn us down. In panel meetings, we've made a similar request. There are similar programs in place. Say, for example, the Justices of Peace will regularly inspect prison. So I do think that you can enhance transparency when it comes to allowing inspection to these animal management centers. Animal-friendly measures, we can talk about public transportation, relaxation of prohibition to keep dogs in the public housing estates, and also access to public space. Not long ago, we had there was a subcommittee to study issues related to animal-friendly measures. We had a lot of discussion, and there was no conclusion. Many matters would be followed up, that's all. The concept of animal-friendly does not exist in the minds of a lot of government officials. Say, for example, when we're looking into relaxation of prohibition of keeping of dogs in public housing estates, we only want a minor relaxation. Say, for example, puppies of guide dogs, can it be kept in public housing estates? And also breeding dogs for guide dogs, can they be kept in the public housing estates? Can there be some quota given to adopted animals? Or what about newly constructed public housing estates? We would just like to explore these areas. However, the officials of the housing department said in the paper that, well, given the fact that we from time to time there are dog biting incidents, I saw that, and members who attach importance to animal rights saw this line. They said, "Don't just say this; it has to be supported by figures." We asked government official, and they said, "No figures. We're only learning about it from the press." So they did not even think about considering the proposal to relax. They just said, well, they've read about dog biting incidents, but from time to time we hear about people fighting. Of course, in a community there may be dogs scaring people, dog pooping everywhere. And I do think it's down to irresponsible pet owners. Don't direct your anger towards dogs. Well, that is this. Well, this is Photoshop. The dog was Photoshopped there, saying that the dog has just done a number 2 there. Well, you can't just make up a photograph like that, because the dog can be easily replaced by a human being. So you have to have the right attitude towards animals.
Mr. Tanya Chan, thank you, Mr. Deputy. Today we talk about animal rights. But sometimes our friends forget about wildlife, wild animals. They live in our country parks. And Hong Kong is an important habitat for many wild animals. And I don't know why from time to time the government would try to use country parks for other purposes. It's said that 2 sites at the fringe of country park will be used for housing, as if they are not part of the country parks. The fringe is still within the country parks. So the government is eyeing on our country parks. In other words, they wanted to use it as a landfill. It didn't work out, and now they want to use it for the public housing or non-profit making the elderly housing. But the government could not bear to do it, and the Hong Kong Housing Society was asked to do it. It said that the government invites the Housing Society to look at to conduct ecological studies of 2 sites at the fringe of the country park, and then I asked where they are, and do we have plans? And then they said the Housing Society will use their own resources to do this feasibility study. And it is understood that they will look at Yuen Long, Tai Lam, and Shui Chin Low in Sha Tin. Both sites have a size of 20-odd hectares. They would use this as a pilot scheme. And the government hasn't got any concrete plans to do it, and so we cannot provide the details. So they try to stay away from this issue. The government wants to put as much distance between itself and the plan. So why is it that they are only looking at 2 sites, and it's said that the 2 sites that would be most suitable for Hong Kong Society programs? Well, we don't know what the CE would do. Well, 689 is still the CE, and now when he's about to leave office, he will also leave this time bomb to Mrs. Carrie Lam. It said there will be a working group. The tasks mainly to look at the land supply, and they will look at everything: brownfield size, green belt size, and also country parks. So they will look at all these comprehensively. There will be priorities. They will look at the overall supply. And instead of this particular program on country parks, if the ecological value is destroyed, many animals will be affected. They live in the wild, but they are entitled to certain rights, not just pets entitled to certain rights. But have we shown any concern about this? Recently, that's the egret incident in Pt2, and we are all angry. I was taken aback by that, because according to our law, it's very clear. It's about Cap 170, Section 5, Wildlife Protection Ordinance. We protect nests and eggs. Well, we once thought that this would have got nothing to do with us forever. So anyone, unless acting on a special permit, should not remove, damage, destroy, or tamper with any nests of eggs or protected bird species. I've asked questions of the AFCD through my full correspondence with the AFCD and also through electrical questions. I asked the AFCD a question about permits. The AFCD said no such permit have been issued in the past 5 years. And this time it's not the FEHT. The LCSC said they had received complaints at the end of May, and so the trees had to be trimmed, but no more specifics were provided. On the 6th of June, they inspected the trees and they did not find any nests. Well, it's a visual inspection of the trees. That's the first step. But they didn't see anything. They just see the wood, the trees, the leaves, but not the nest. That's simply not possible. So that inspection is problematic in itself, and perhaps they pretended not to see. So it's a selective brightness of the nets and the hatchlings. This habitat in egretry in Pt2 is an important one, but we should all be compassionate. We should not just poke at the nest. If you see one on the tree and let the young birds drop to death. But the LCSD's answer is about what they didn't know. Mr. Deputy, you are a lawyer. You know that if ignorance of the law is just a ground for the mitigation, not a ground of innocence. So the LCSD should be more careful whether it's the egret, a wild animal, a wild bird. They should all be careful. We should not abandon animals once they are not needed. We're talking about life. I don't think we should not release animals into the wild for mercy grounds. We should take care of our pets. Mr. Elvin Young. First of all, Mr. Deputy, I have to first of all report that we are very pleased with the temperature and the air conditioning in this chamber today. This motion moved by Mr. KWONG Chun-yu enabled us to talk about animal rights within this legislative year. This is a good thing. Hong Kong is an international city, and there should always be discussions on animal rights in Hong Kong. That's a story involving a monk, and there's a quarrel, dispute between monks for the ownership of a cat, and the master asked whether the two monks have got specific grounds to argue for the cat ownership, and it could not be settled. So the master cut the cat into half. Well, this could not have happened and accepted in Hong Kong. Even, the master may also be facing criminal prosecution if he did that. So we do have something about protecting animal rights. The question is whether it's adequate and whether the attitude of the government is in line with our so-called international standards. My party, the Civic Party, since its establishment, has been paying attention to animal rights. At the last legislative session, we discussed a relevant piece of legislation. It's CAP 139B, or is an amendment to the regulations to regulate the selling of and breeding of pets. And that some members would like to have a licensing system. But we are saying that domestic breeding is low in the threshold, so we believe that the licensing conditions, the licensing threshold, should be raised, and we should not accept the licensing system first before seeking improvements. Some pro-establishment members are very caring. They want to protect animal rights, but sometimes they have to defer to the position adopted by their parties. But some pro-establishment members are either ignorant or careless. They think animals are the commodities, and buying pets is the only way to own pets. We have the scheme of TNVR implemented by the government as a trial, but it's been tried again and again. And every time they will tell us that they're waiting for the findings to come back. Well, this is against the wishes of the government or of the community, and this TNVR scheme should not be in a pilot scheme forever. We should adopt this to take the place of the inhumane euthanization scheme. For stray dogs and cats are abandoned animals. That's a problem caused by man, caused by people. And the government adopts a people-oriented attitude. When animals become a problem, they will use taxpayers' money to kill the animals to solve the problem caused by humans. The Civic Party is of the view that an animal-friendly policy should facilitate a community whereby humans and animals can live coexist peacefully. And the government has still failed to change its mindset, and every year we're spending a lot of money to so-called euthanize these animals. This is not acceptable. Apart from TNVR, the government has ignored our aspirations. It has failed to review and formulate animal protection rights. We were concerned about breeding of pets, and it was only last year that CAP 139B was amended. In the circle where people care about animal rights, this is a worrying trend, and the government insisted on its way after getting the sufficient number of votes it needed. The government always said that it had been responding to the wishes to have more pet owners. Look at the one next to Tamar. It's just a passageway for animals to enter is it really animal friendly? In the face of where in the 21st century we are educated people, are we able to really embrace human rights and also allow the animals and people to coexist peacefully? Or I'm not quite sure that the government has achieved that, and I hope the next secretary, i.e. the current undersecretary, would do something to fight for a suitable space and environment for animals in Hong Kong.
Mr. James To. I'd like to talk about one issue, and that is the establishment of animal police. We have been discussing this topic for a long time, at least 10 years. Mr. Albert Ho, the former electrical member in 2008, also moved a motion on the setting up of the animal police. It's been 10 years. But it seems that the government is not buying our idea of a specialized team of animal police. The issue is simple, because we have more and more people keeping pets now. Many couples, for various reasons, have decided not to have children, and instead they keep pets as the family members. The couple treat their pets as their own child. So imagine your family member being abused or hurt, and when we reported the matter to the police, we find that in terms of the manpower resources, the level of investigation, and the professional handling of the matter, we find that it's below the standard for that in a case when people are involved. So this is inadequate. I understand the government will be saying that they have already set up specialized teams in certain districts so that they can focus the resources on investigating cases in certain districts. But in many other districts, like Yuen Long, the constituency of Mr. Roy Kwong, I understand that there is no such team. But these cases happened all over Hong Kong, so perhaps we should draw reference from other countries, such as the Netherlands or the United States. They have already set up animal police. This is an indicator of how much we attach our importance to the rights of animals. In the Netherlands, they have a team of 200 officers as animal police. In LA, the United States, the team started this operation in 2005 in Kansas. Also, they have a specialized team of animal police taking up these cases. Even in Taiwan, Xinbei City, they have officers dedicated to protecting animals, and these police officers have to go through specialized training on and also to help with dealing with animal cruelty cases. I mentioned a number of cities or countries, and we have a population size similar to these cities. And in fact, for our economic development, we have surpassed some of the cities mentioned. So why is it that we are still not setting up animal police? Now, I have tried to understand why the government is not willing to set up this team. And I have frequent contact with the police, and as I gathered from them, their stance is whether we really need to be so serious as to set up a team of animal police. Some of the police officers are actually quite resentful about the idea. I think the crux of the matter is there should be a specialized team, and they should undergo formal training so that they have real knowledge and in handling these cases. They should have the knowledge and experience. And if we have this special team, it would be good for the police force as a whole. Because, frankly, if a police district doesn't come with this special team, then officers not familiar with animals would be deployed to investigate these cases. And let's take me as an example. I don't keep pets, I don't understand animals, but if I am in charge of an investigation, I may be very inefficient. And if I don't make progress, and if the complainant doesn't really thinks that you don't understand animals, because when you take a statement, they will find out. And frankly, if the complainant finds that the police officer is asking questions or taking statement in such an ignorant manner, then they'll be very unhappy with the officer, and you would have no alternative but to take the blame and be criticized. So I think setting up a dedicated team is the best option. As to whether there will be a waste of resources because we have a big team but no case to look into, at this juncture, I don't think this is happening. I just think that they will be having a huge workload. I hope that the police would seriously look into this matter so that we can be proud for living in such a civilized place. Dr. N. Chang. Mr. Deputy, thank you. In 2010, I remember that there was a survey of the 2.4 million households in Hong Kong. How many households have cats and dogs? According to the survey, 240,000 something households keep cats and dogs. And in 2015-16, there is a report released by the Hong Kong professional veterinary consultant, and of the 2.4 million households in Hong Kong, over 500,000 households now keep cats and dogs. So if we take pets as a whole, then altogether 1 million households do have pets. So we can see that there is a wider animal-loving culture in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, in recent years, we have also seen some reports on cruel treatment to animals and abuse of animals. And the crux of the matter is our law. To protect animals, the only ordinance that we rely on is a Prevention of Cruelty to Animals ordinance, but it is outdated. The maximum penalty is $200,000 and imprisonment of 3 years. It seems to be on a par with other countries that we're not being too lenient to the offenders. But why is it that there is no deterrence? Why is it that it doesn't have any deterrent effect. The reason is we have a very low detection rate of animal cruelty cases. Even if the culprits are identified, we cannot successfully bring him to justice. Imagine, as you can see, we have only 2 cases of successful conviction of the offenders, because in many other cases, well, for example, let's say there is a flat and the flat owner hasn't turned up for days, and the dogs inside have been barking very loudly with no one feeding them or giving them water. But what is the proof of not having anyone inside the flat? How about when the witness is sleeping, the flat owner returns in the middle of the night and feed the dogs? And let's say if you bring entry and finds that there is no water in the bowl, you could just say that the dogs have just drunk all the water. So there is nothing to pin on when we want to prosecute the offender. And there is also another problem of abandoning pets. We can only rely on the rabies ordinance. If you abandon your animal without reasonable excuse, you will be committing an offense, and you'll be subject to a fine of $10,000 and imprisonment of 6 months. But over the past 10 years, how many successful cases have the AFCD prosecuted? Only 2 offenders were prosecuted with a fine of $2,500 and $500. The reason is that very often the owners would say that they were not abandoning the animals, they were just opening the door, and then the dogs just ran out to play, and the dogs were there nowhere to be seen. I wasn't abandoning the pets, so it's really difficult to enforce the law. And we have also received views from animal welfare groups suggesting that abandoning pets should be incorporated in the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance, and we should also make the definition clearer. We also believe that it is important to set up or to enact legislation on protection of animals. In other jurisdictions like Taiwan, Macau, Japan, and even Australia, there are animal protection laws.
They have comprehensive laws on animal protection. And it's been said that Ms. Zhang has suggested that we should use a stray cats to catch mouse, and I should not regard the stray cats as a tool. Actually, I visited some locations, shelter for stray cats, and they would be put down if not adopted in the short terms. And I just want to save as many of them as possible. If they are released back to the community, they would be able to live. And I thank the various concerned groups have been looking into the question of releasing stray dogs after neutering, and let's see if they can be good for catching mouse. But if you say I use them as a tool, then aren't dogs also used as a working tool? And even in the UK, the PM's residence has a cat, the chief mouser. Since the amendment to Cap 139B, but there are other loopholes. So I support the motion. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll ask Mr. Kwong Chun-yu to speak. You may now speak on the amendments. The time limit is 5 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Deputy, I think members who have moved motions want to protect animals. So the Democratic Party on the whole supports them. And Ms. Claudia MO is of the view that we should not be just talking about environmental hygiene. Apart from CAP 196 and CAP 170, which are directly related to the animals, others are subservient to other social issues, and we are talking about protection of people and not animals. For example, abandonment of animals is an offense, but this is under the rabies ordinance, so it's not that we do not tolerate abandonment, but we just don't want the health risks associated with abandoning dogs. And AFCD has enforced this, has already enforced this. This is most disappointed. Many people think that by protecting animals, we're just protecting pet cats and pet dogs. So I welcome the inclusion of marine animals in Ms. Claudia MO's amendment, and every animal is entitled to life. We also support the amendment moved by Mr. Jeremy TAM. The controversy with the wild pig hunting teams has been around with us for a long time. We should try to find other ways to coexist with wild boars. We hope, I think all the amendments are agreeable, and they are all about taking forward animal protection. I hope this will turn a new leaf in the protection of human rights in Hong Kong, and I hope with this debate we can encourage the community to discuss this on a wider scale, and the government can listen to the community and take active steps to respond to our aspiration. As I said in my opening speech, 10 years ago when I was elected as a district councillor in Yuen Long, one of the first motions I moved was to urge the government to investigate into some cases where stray cats were killed by someone. And now I'm in this council. I hope we would be able to start a discussion on the legislation to protect animals. Today marks only the beginning of this process. Many members have made very good suggestions. All we want to do is to allow the animals to use public transport under certain conditions, for example, for some specific time periods, if they are in a carrier, and then such a public modes of transport as public buses and MTR will allow the animals, and we hope that animal issues will be in the textbook of our children from the kindergarten level, so that they learn about this from a very young age. And we should also establish the animal police as soon as possible. There are cowards who take pleasure in killing animals, and so far we haven't been able to bring them to justice. Animals cannot speak for them, so I would be their advocate. If you don't love them, it's okay, but don't harm them. In 2017, here in Hong Kong, we are a compassionate and civilized society. As Gandhi once famously said, how civilized a society is determined on how well the animals are treated. I hope this motion on human rights will turn a new leaf in this subject. Thank you.
The Secretary for Food and Health. President, first on behalf of the other relevant policy bureaus, I'd like to thank members for their precious views on this topic. The administration has been placing emphasis on animal welfare. As I said at the beginning of this debate, in the past few years, the administration has done a lot in this regard. Stray animals have dwindled in number by a big margin, and we are continuing with public education in order to increase the public's awareness of animal welfare. And we are also promoting rehoming animals and for owners to be responsible owners. We'd like to reduce the situation of abandoning pets. The police and the AFCD have been cracking down on cruelty to animals. Just now, many members ask the administration to do more public education. This will be stepped up. Even if we have done a lot, we'd like to continue to promote and protect animal welfare, and we agree that there should be a review from time to time and also to do even more. The FSEH panel of the LEGCO set up the subcommittee to study matters relating to animal welfare at the end of last year. Many meetings have been held. Today, many members' concerns were discussed at this subcommittee. The policies to protect animals even more will be taken up by the administration, which adopts an open attitude on this one. After the subcommittee has finished its discussion and come up with proposals, we will consider them. We already have different animal welfare related legislation. Whether they can protect animal welfare depends on the actual content of the provisions and whether they can achieve the objectives. We'll continue to avail ourselves of international trends and the local situation. I'm aware that many members said that our laws are outdated. We'll continue to review and improve upon them. I'd like to emphasize that in furthering animal welfare, we must adopt a pragmatic attitude. We must not lose sight of the views of different people in society, and members have mentioned those views, so that we can protect animal welfare and public hygiene, so that we can strike a balance between different concerns. Last but not least, promoting animal welfare requires the cooperation and support of the different sectors in society. We'll continue to liaise with different stakeholders and also will cooperate with the relevant bureaus and departments. Thank you.
I now call upon Ms. Claudia MO to move an amendment. President, I move that Mr. Kwong Chun-yu's motion be amended. I propose the question to you that the amendment moved by Ms. Claudia MO to Mr. Kwong Chun-yu's motion be passed. I now put the question to you as stated. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Ms. Claudia MO claims a division. Voting begins. Please verify your votes. If there's no question, voting is now closed and the result displayed. FC members, 19 present, 7 for, 2 against, 9 abstentions. GC members, 17 present, 9 for, 1 against, 7 abstentions. The question is not agreed by a majority respectively of each of the two groups of members. I declare the amendment negatived. Mr. KWONG Chun-yu, I move that, Madam Deputy, I move that in the event of further division being claimed at this meeting in respect of the motion on safeguarding animal rights, the Council shall proceed to the division after the division bell has been rung for 1 minute. I now put the question to you, and that is that the motion moved by Mr. KWONG Chun-yu be passed. Does any member wish to speak? I now put the question to you as stated. With those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hand. I think the question is agreed by a majority respectively of the each of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GC through direct elections who are present. I declare the motion passed, and I direct that in the event of further divisions being claimed at this meeting in respect of the motion on safeguarding animal rights, this Council shall proceed to the division of the division bell has been rung for 1 minute. Dr. Priscilla LEUNG, you may move your amendment. Madam Deputy, I move that Mr. KWONG Chun-yu's motion be amended. I propose the question to you that the amendment moved by Dr. Priscilla LEUNG to Mr. KWONG Chun-yu's motion be passed. And I put the question to you as stated. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Mr. Chu Hoi claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute.
開始表決。
Voting begins. Please verify your votes. Mr. Leung Yu Chung. If there's no question, voting is now closed and the result displayed. FC members 20 present, 16 for, none for, 3 abstentions. GC members 18 present, 16 for, 2 against, no abstention. The question is agreed by majority respectively of the 2 groups of members. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Jeremy Tam, as Dr. Priscilla Leung's amendment has been passed, you may move your revised amendment. Madam Deputy, I move that Mr. Kwong Chun-yu's motion as amended by Dr. Priscilla Leung be further amended by my revised amendment. I now propose the question to you, and that is that Mr. Jeremy Tam's amendment to Mr. Kwong Chun-yu's motion as amended by Dr. Priscilla Leung be passed. I now put a question to you as stated. Would those in favor please raise their hands? Mr. Jeremy Tam claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Mrs. Regina Yip, members, please check your votes. If there's no question, voting is now closed and the result displayed. FC members 20 present, 14 for, none against, 5 abstentions. GC members 18 present, 17 for, none against, 1 abstention. The question is agreed by majority respectively of each of the 2 groups of members. I declare the amendment passed. Dr. Elizabeth QUAT, as the amendments of Dr. Priscilla Leung and Mr. Jeremy TAM have been passed, you may now move your revised amendment. Madam Deputy, I move that Mr. Kwong Chun-yu's motion as amended by Dr. Priscilla Leung and Mr. Jeremy TAM be further amended by my revised amendment. I now propose the question to you that Dr. Elizabeth QUAT's amendment to Mr. Kwong Chun-yu's motion as amended by Dr. Priscilla Leung and Mr. Jeremy TAM be passed. I now put the question to you as stated. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Dr. Elizabeth QUAT claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, please verify your votes, members. If there's no question, voting is now closed and result displayed. FC members, 20 present, 16 for, none against, 3 abstentions. GC members, 18 present, 16 for, none against, 2 abstentions. The question is agreed by majority respectively of each of the 2 groups of members. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Chan Hak-kan, as the amendments of Dr. Priscilla Leung, Mr. Jeremy TAM, and Dr. Elizabeth QUAT have been passed, you may move your revised amendment. Madam Deputy, I move that Mr. KWONG Chun-yu's motion as amended by Dr. Priscilla Leung, Mr. Jeremy TAM, and Dr. Elizabeth QUAT be further amended by the revised amendment. I now propose the question to you that Mr. Chan Hak-kan's amendment to Mr. KWONG Chun-yu's motion as amended by Dr. Priscilla Leung, Mr. Jeremy TAM, and Dr. Elizabeth QUAT be passed. I now put the question to you as stated. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Mr. Chan Hak-kan claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Members, please check your votes. Mr. Cheung Kok-kwan, would you like to take part in the vote? If there's no question, voting is now closed and the result displayed. FC members, 20 present, 16 for, no one against, and 3 abstentions. GC members, 19 present, 19 for, no one against, and no abstention. The question is agreed by majority respectively of each of the 2 groups of members. I've declared the amendment passed. Mr. KWONG Chun-yu, you still have 1 minute and 57 seconds to reply. Thereafter, the debate will come to a close. Mr. KWONG Chun-yu, Madam Deputy, 10 years ago, I moved my first motion as a district councillor urging the police to severely punish the culprits who had abused cats. 10 years later, I move a motion here on animal rights. Some people may think that these motions are just about dogs and cats, but dogs and cats are lives too. We should not allow these criminals to abuse dogs and cats and kill them without having to face criminal consequences. Well, Mr. Alice Mack talked about a kind of well-being called animal well-being, but I would say that all animals are equal in rights. I hope this motion on safeguarding animal rights can turn a new leaf in the promotion of such rights in Hong Kong. I know there are people who are following up our debate on the internet. I know that we are going to face a lot of discouragement on the way, but don't give up. Hong Kong is proud of itself because we have a sound system, and more important, that we have a compassionate mind, a compassionate heart. And the compassionate mind takes care of not just people, but also struggling animals in Hong Kong. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those compassionate people fighting for animal rights in Hong Kong. And I hope that this motion can be passed and we can turn a new leaf in this particular field. And I'll put a question to you, and that is that the motion moved by Mr. KWONG Chun-yu as amended by Dr. Priscilla LEUNG, Mr. Jeremy TAM, and Dr. Elizabeth QUAT, and Mr. CHAN Hak-kan be passed. With those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by majority respectively of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GC through direct elections who are present. I declare the motion passed. And I'll adjourn the meeting till the 5th of July 2017 at 9 a.m. where we are going to have the CE question time.